back to the My Slice of Life podcast with me, Sharon O'Neill. I hope you had a wonderful Christmas and you're getting ready to celebrate the new year later this week. And if this is your first time listening, this is the podcast where we explore life's joys, challenges, share practical advice and hopefully inspire a little positivity along the way. I cover a very wide range of interesting topics from life, ranging from productivity, gardening, mysteries, movies, you name it, I cover it. Basically whatever is interesting or whatever crops up, we're going to talk about it. This season is called From Random to Rants, and for this episode we're diving into a fascinating topic: how the way we think about time, whether we focus on the past, live in the present or dream about the future, can shape our mental health. Have you ever given any thought to how you think? You might be surprised by what you find out today. I mean, I've been reading articles, watching TED Talks, I've skated around YouTube, and today I'm bringing you a summary of what I found out about all of this. So what kind of thinker are you? Have you ever wondered why some people get stuck reliving the past, going over and over the same things, while others can't stop worrying about the future? Or why some people seem completely content just enjoying the moment? Understanding these time perspectives can apparently offer us insight into traits like anxiety and depression, and even how we approach our goals and relationships. By the end of this episode, you'll have a clearer picture of what these time perspectives are and how your own time perspective might be influencing your life. So grab a cuppa, sit back, and let's get started. First, let's talk about time perspectives. This idea comes from a psychologist by the name of Dr. Philip Zimbardo, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And if he sounds familiar, that's because he was the guy responsible for the Stanford Prison experiment. Anyway, he identified ways in which we think about time, the past, the present, and the future, and what it means for us and how we think. Dr. Zimbardo identified 6 different time perspectives. There's the past negative. This is when someone has a negative and critical view of the past, and people with a past negative perspective have a pessimistic view of previous experiences and tend to dwell on bad memories. This can lead to feelings of regret, resentment, and even depression. Then there's past positive, and this is someone, as you can imagine, has a warm, nostalgic view of the past. Individuals with a past positive perspective maintain connections to traditions and recall the past with fondness and nostalgia. They embrace the familiar. Then we have present hedonistic, which describes someone who has a pleasure-seeking, risk-taking view of the present. Present hedonists live in the moment and they seek new sensations and experiences. They tend to be impulsive and make decisions for short-term gains. On the flip side of that, we have present fatalist, which is when someone has a helpless and hopeless view of the present. Present fatalists have a sense that the future is predetermined and that individual actions have little meaningful impact. This perspective is associated with apathy and lack of motivation. And this brings us to the future thinkers, which he also splits into 2 groups. The first is the future life goal oriented group. These people have an aspirational view of the future, their focus is on anticipated consequences, and people with a dominant future perspective set goals, delay gratification, and engage in planning to achieve their vision. They're willing to sacrifice short-term pleasure for long-term rewards. The other group he calls transcendental. This group believes that life only begins after death. Dr. Zimbardo argued that having a balanced time perspective is optimal for psychological health and success. So what do you make of this so far? I mean, that's the groups that Dr. Zimbardo came up with, but here's the kicker. None of these perspectives is inherently good or bad. Each one has its own strengths and weaknesses, and our mental health can be deeply influenced by where we spend most of our mental energy. So let's break it down just a little more. And let's start with the past-focused perspective. If you're someone who spends a lot of time reflecting on what's happened in the past, you might resonate with this. Past-focused individuals often have a strong sense of identity. They might feel gratitude for the good times they've experienced or cherish traditions and relationships in their past. But there's a downside too. Dwelling on past mistakes or painful memories can often lead to rumination, a pattern of overthinking that's closely linked to depression. Here's a couple more of the suggested traits of past thinkers, and please remember, I'm bringing this to you because I think it's interesting, not because I think it's necessarily right or carved in stone. And this isn't the same as Dr. Zimbardo's, this kind of is more generalised. So apparently, traits of past thinkers include things like there's being sentimental. People who frequently reminisce about the past tend to be more sentimental, holding on to memories and emotions from earlier times. They say they're also overthinkers, that those who dwell on past events or experiences may exhibit overthinking tendencies, replaying scenarios in their minds and analysing what could have been done differently. Then there's being nostalgic. Individuals with a strong tendency to think in the past often exhibit nostalgia, romanticising earlier times and places. On the other hand, there's brooding. Ruminating on past negative experiences or traumas can lead to the brooding, characterised by a tendency to dwell on the painful memories and emotions. Apparently, people who focus on the past may be less open-minded, less open to new ideas and perspectives, as they're more invested in reliving and reinterpreting past experiences. And apparently, they're more likely to hold a grudge. They say individuals who dwell on past conflicts or injustices may be more prone to holding grudges and struggling to forgive so that they can actually move on in their life. So just as an example, imagine you've had a tough experience like falling out with a friend. If you're constantly replaying that moment in your mind, asking yourself, what could I have done differently, or why did they treat me like that? It can become a real mental trap, and this kind of thinking can make it harder for you to move on. But it isn't something you have to feel stuck with. There are things you can do, and if you're a regular listener, you'll know I like to give practical tips when I can. So, what can you do if you find yourself stuck in the past? The first thing you can try is to practice gratitude. I've mentioned this before, and it seems to be a very popular thing these days as folk are realising the benefits that it can actually offer. And all you have to do is take a few minutes each day to jot down positive memories or things you're thankful for. That really helps to bring you to the present day, things that are happening now, as opposed to going over things that are way back in the past. Another thing you can do is to reframe your thoughts. Now, I did a whole episode about negative thinking and how to challenge it in the last season, so I'm just going to mention this quickly. So as an example, if a situation didn't go the way you thought it would, instead of saying, I failed, or something similar like that, try things like, well, I've learned something valuable from that. Just take a moment to look at the situation in a different light. This can be done as part of the gratitude thing too. What did you learn? What new experience came about as a result of it? What do you know you definitely wouldn't do again? Or what would you try differently? There's always a different way to look at a situation, and reframing just helps you see past events in a more balanced light rather than just a negative one. So try that if you think that has described the way that you've been thinking. But now let's talk about the present focused perspective. And people in this group tend to live in the moment, which can go mainly in one of two ways. And this is where it differs slightly from Dr. Zimbardo's description. The hedonism, yes, that comes up again. From what I've found, they're saying hedonistic, present-focused individuals chase pleasure and avoid pain. Think of the little kids who can't wait for some treats. Even if that would mean getting more later on, all they will focus on is getting what they can now. This type of perspective can lead to impulsive behaviours like overspending or risky decisions. The consequences aren't taken into account. And while, yes, it might feel good in the moment, these actions can have long-term consequences that lead to regret or anxiety. And on the flip side of that is something which I don't think Dr. Zimbardo really discussed, at least not in the bits that I found, and that's the mindful, present-focused individuals. So you can see there's a slight change coming here. These are the people who find joy in simple things like sipping tea while watching the rain or noticing the beauty of a sunrise. This practice of being mindful can reduce stress and promote overall well-being. Sounds like a good way to be, doesn't it? So you can see the difference there. Dr. Zimbardo talks about the hedonists, but he talked more about the present fatalist types, whereas the group that I've been reading about is much more hopeful, being more mindful and present. So there is a big difference in the descriptions here. You see, when we're too present-focused in a hedonistic way, we might neglect responsibilities or long-term goals, which can lead to anxiety later on. But a mindful approach to the present can really help us reduce stress and appreciate the here and now. And a few of the traits attributed to present-focused people include being capable of enjoying the moment. These people have the great ability to focus on the task at hand. Apparently, they can be difficult to distract once they're on a task, and they might not even be aware of anything else going on around them. It's said that these present types of thinkers are fairly resistant to worry or anxiety. They seem to sense that issues will either sort themselves out so long as they keep plugging away at the task at hand, or someone else will worry about it for them. That's just a roundup of what I've been finding, but I don't think, like I was saying earlier, I don't think we can apply this to everybody. But if you are looking to make a few changes to help you to strike a more balanced perspective on life, I do have a couple of suggestions for you. And the first one is to try mindfulness meditation. And I know what you're thinking, but hear me out. You don't need to sit for hours on end. Just 5 minutes a day can help you just to stay present without becoming impulsive. And if that sounds too much, start small, real small, and build up gradually. One of the ways you might find incorporating mindfulness into your day a little easier is to start with your meals. Don't have any distractions. Put your knife and fork down between mouthfuls and really concentrate on your food. The smell, the look, the taste. Do it as if it's the first time you've ever eaten, and take your time. Once you get used to slowing down in the present and focusing, you might find moving on to the kind of short meditation a bit easier. It'll be an easier transition because you'll be more used to doing things slowly, calmly, taking your time and doing that on purpose. The second thing you can try is to use the pause moment technique. Before making a decision, take a deep breath and ask yourself, will this choice serve me in the long run? This is a great one if you're prone to impulse buying, for example. Just take a moment, and having some sort of reminder here can be really handy, especially if it's another person who can help you to pause and take a moment before you go spending. It's a great one that ask yourself that question, how is this going to serve me in the long run? Even, do I really need this, or am I falling for a trap here? You know how they put certain items at the checkout, or they have these things on supposed special offer just at the ends of the aisles to catch our eye? I fall for that sometimes, and I have to remind myself, look, this is a trap. Do you really need it? Not do you want it, because obviously you're going to want it. Do you need it? Will it serve you in some way? So now we come to the future-focused perspective. If you're someone who loves setting goals and planning ahead, this might be you. Future-focused people are often driven and prepared. They think long-term and they take steps to ensure success. However, as with all things, there is also a downside to this time perspective. When we focus too much on the future, we can experience chronic stress. Worrying about what might happen or trying to achieve perfection, it can lead to anxiety, and if our goals feel unattainable, it can even trigger feelings of failure or depression. A few other suggested traits of future-focused people might include things like something they call on to the future. That means these people are always doing something, going somewhere, and in general, multitasking. I have spoken about multitasking before and why we should be single-tasking. But these guys, they're natural managers and planners. They're responsible, capable, perceptive, really good thinkers. You take a task or event and they will be the ones to break it down into manageable steps, look at it from many different perspectives and tell you what could go wrong or how it should be done for the best outcome. But set them in front of a stack of paperwork and ask them to file alphabetically and they will self-destruct. If one task takes too much time and requires all their attention, forget it. These types can be easily distracted. They're susceptible to excessive worry, anxiety, sleep disturbances, and burnout. Now, I have talked a lot about burnout in the productivity season, So go and have a listen to that season if you haven't already heard it. But these people, they tend to take on more responsibility than they can ultimately handle. And because they don't understand why others don't think or act the way they do, they can inadvertently say or do things that will cause others to feel inadequate. Here's an example. Have you ever found yourself lying awake at night running through everything you need to get done tomorrow or imagining worst case scenarios? That's your future focus at work, and it can feel really overwhelming. So if this sounds like you and it's a problem for you, then I do have a couple of practical ideas for you too. And the first one is to set realistic goals. Now I know it said you're good at goal planning, but let's make them realistic. I have talked a lot about goal setting before, especially if it's quite a big goal, and I've gone over how to break tasks into smaller, easy to manage steps. So again, if you've missed it, go and listen to the last season, as it covered all sorts of things to do with productivity, and goal setting was a big topic. It kept coming up over and over again. The other thing you can try is to practice visualization, so you don't worry about the future, but you're building up a positive image in your head. And the trick here is to keep it in balance and not expect perfection. Remember, it's okay to make mistakes, and that not only is perfection unlikely, it isn't even necessary. We really need to get away from this everything has to be done perfectly. It's too overwhelming, it's unrealistic, so forget that. Okay, so now that we've explored a bit more into the past, present and future perspectives, I just want to give you a takeaway here. Each perspective has its own strengths and weaknesses, so balance really is a key here. Dwelling too much on the past can lead to depression. Living only in the moment can create this impulsivity, while over-focusing on the future can cause stress and anxiety. And I asked you right at the start, what kind of thinker are you? What conclusion have you come up with? If you still aren't sure, and remember, we will flow from one to the other at times, but we will also have a stronger tendency towards a main type, so ask yourself, where do I spend most of my mental energy? And from there, you'll be able to work out what small changes you can make to bring more balance into your life. Leave me a wee comment and let me know what kind of thinker you are. I used to be a pretty past negative thinker, but these days I'm more mindful present, although, I have to work at staying there because I do have a tendency to slip back. But I think that's mostly where I am. I say that, I know I have this future-oriented part as well. So yeah, I definitely slide from one to the other, but I'm working very, very hard to be this present, mindful person. Doesn't always work. I do my best. We all just do our best. And all that leaves me to say thank you very much for spending some of your time with me this week. I know time is valuable, so I really do appreciate it. And I hope that you did get something out of today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe or follow, and if you have ideas for future episodes, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. So until next week, my friend, you take care of your wee self.